I saved an elderly Apache woman and she said, 'My daughters are yours,'. The desert stretched endlessly, quiet except for the occasional whisper of the wind through the dry grass. He had been walking for hours, his boots crunching over the gravelly earth, when he first heard it, a faint, desperate cry carried by the wind. At first he thought it might be his imagination, but then it came again, sharper this time, a sound of real fear and pain. He stopped immediately, listening carefully. The cry seemed to come from somewhere near the edge of a small ravine, hidden behind scattered rocks and scrub. Without thinking much, he started moving toward the sound, his heart beating faster. Something told him that someone was in trouble, and he couldn't ignore it. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the land, and the urgency in the cries grew more apparent. As he rounded a bend in the rocky terrain, he saw her. An elderly Apache woman, her clothes torn and dusty, was trapped under a fallen branch. Her frail hands struggled to push it away, but the branch was too heavy for her alone. Her face was lined with age and worry, and her eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto him. "Help, please," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and exhaustion. He didn't hesitate. Dropping his bag, he rushed forward, gripping the branch and straining with all his strength. It took a moment, but with a final heave, he managed to lift it just enough for her to crawl free. She stumbled, and he caught her before she fell, supporting her weak frame. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence broken only by her ragged breathing and the faint whisper of the wind. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes glistening with tears. You saved me," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. There was gratitude, fear, and something else in her tone, a quiet, profound respect that made him pause. He nodded, unsure what to say. The desert around them was silent again, the threat gone, but the moment felt heavier than the sun setting above. I cannot thank you enough," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "You have saved my life. My daughters, they are yours." He blinked, taken aback. The words sounded strange, almost surreal. He didn't fully understand their meaning. "Your daughters?" he asked cautiously. I don't understand." She smiled faintly, a small, tired smile that seemed to carry both wisdom and sorrow. "I am old and I cannot protect them alone. There are dangers in this world, people who would see them harmed. You have shown courage and kindness. I trust you. My daughters, I place them in your care." Her words made his heart tighten. The weight of her trust, of the promise she was offering, was immense. He had only saved her from immediate danger, yet she was giving him responsibility for the lives of her children. It was not something he had ever imagined, yet looking at her he felt a deep, unspoken connection, a sense that he had been brought to this moment for a reason. "Where are they?" he asked gently. "Are they nearby?" She nodded. "They wait for me at the edge of the canyon. They do not know yet that I have been hurt. You must meet them. They need someone strong, someone kind, someone who will protect them as I cannot." He glanced around the rocky landscape. The sun had almost disappeared now, leaving a soft purple glow in the sky. The desert seemed endless, and he realized that the journey ahead, whatever it might be, would not be easy. But he also understood that turning away was impossible. Not after what had just happened. Not after seeing her face, so filled with trust and hope. Slowly he offered his hand to help her stand. She took it, gripping it tightly despite her frailty. Step by step, they moved away from the fallen branch, his support steadying her unsteady legs. Each movement seemed small, ordinary even, but in that quiet desert, it carried a weight of promise, of responsibility, of something far greater than either of them could yet understand. As they walked, she spoke in a soft voice, telling him stories of her daughters, of the family she had tried so hard to protect, of the dangers that lurked even in the open desert. He listened closely, absorbing every word. She spoke not just of threats, but also of the love she felt for them, the deep, unbreakable bond of a mother. Her words painted pictures in his mind, Two young girls, brave in their own ways, yet vulnerable and in need of guidance. By the time they reached the canyon's edge, the last light of day had faded, and the stars were beginning to appear, twinkling like tiny lanterns in the vast darkness. There he saw them, two young girls no older than 10 and 12, their faces streaked with dust and tears, eyes wide with fear and confusion. They froze when they saw him, unsure what to make of the stranger who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. The elderly woman gently guided them forward. "These are the ones I spoke of," she said softly. "They are strong, but they need protection. I have chosen you. Will you keep them safe?" He felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. He looked into the faces of the girls. Their fear mingled with curiosity, and something inside him shifted. He knew at that moment that his life had changed. There was no turning back. The responsibility was immense, but so was the trust they were placing in him. He nodded firmly. "I will keep them safe," he said. A wave of relief seemed to wash over the elderly woman. She smiled, a small but genuine smile, and reached out to touch his arm gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "You are a good person. They will grow to know that, and you will see the strength in them as I have." The desert night grew colder, and he wrapped the woman in his jacket, ensuring she would be warm. The girls clung to her side, glancing at him with cautious eyes. He felt a mixture of fear, determination, and hope. The journey ahead would not be simple. There would be challenges, dangers, and tests of courage. But at that moment, under the vast, starry sky, a bond was formed, a bond of trust, of protection, and of responsibility that would shape all their lives. As they made their way toward a safer place for the night, the wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it a sense of destiny. He realized that sometimes life places people in the right moment for a reason. And sometimes a single act of courage can change not just one life, but the lives of many. That night, as they huddled near a small fire, he watched the elderly woman carefully settle the girls near him. Her eyes held gratitude and faith, and in her gaze he saw the unspoken promise of a future he had not yet imagined. He knew that tomorrow and every day after would be a test of courage, compassion, and patience. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a deep sense of purpose, a knowledge that he was where he was meant to be, with the people he was meant to protect. And so, under the quiet stars of the desert, their journey began, not just a journey of survival, but of trust, hope, and the fragile beginnings of a family formed in the most unexpected way. The echo of her words lingered in his mind. "My daughters are yours." He did not yet know the full meaning of those words, but he knew one thing with certainty: he would not fail them. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the thin fabric of the small shelter they had made. Near the canyon, the elderly woman had spent the night carefully preparing a little breakfast of bread and dried fruit, her hands shaking slightly with age but precise in their movements. The girls sat quietly, still a little wary of the stranger who had appeared suddenly in their lives, while he moved carefully, not wanting to frighten them further. As he handed them each a piece of bread, he realized how quiet the desert could be at this hour. Birds began their morning songs, and a distant coyote howled in the hills, but in this small space, the only sounds were the soft murmurs of the women and the quiet crunching of food. The eldest girl, whose name he learned was Ayana, looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The younger, little Najoni, seemed shy, hiding partially behind their grandmother. You are going to take care of us?" Yana asked slowly, her voice tentative. She had sharp eyes that seemed older than her years, and he noticed the way she studied him carefully, as if measuring whether he could be trusted. He nodded gently. "I will. I promise to keep you both safe. Your grandmother trusted me, and I will not let you down." The elderly woman, whose name was Kaya, smiled faintly, a tired but approving expression on her face. "It is not an easy task," she said. "The world outside is dangerous and many do not understand our ways. You must be patient and you must be kind. Only then will you gain their trust." He listened carefully, realizing the weight of her words. This was more than just guiding two young girls to safety. It was about protecting their hearts, their spirits, and their heritage. He understood, even at this early hour, that the journey would test not only his courage but his patience and empathy as well. After breakfast, they began to prepare for the day. The girls followed Kaya closely, helping where they could, learning simple tasks and observing the quiet ways of the desert. He watched them, noticing their alertness, their subtle glances at one another, and the occasional nervous look toward him. It was clear they had been taught to be cautious, and that caution was now mixed with confusion about this new protector in their lives. As they packed what little belongings they had, Kaya spoke softly to him. "They are strong, but they carry the fear of the world with them. It is not your task only to protect their bodies. You must also protect their spirits. Show them kindness, patience, and respect, and they will learn to trust you." He nodded, taking her words to heart. He had faced danger before in his life, but never like this. Not with the lives of children entrusted to him, and the responsibility weighing so heavily on his shoulders. He felt a mix of fear, determination, and a strange sense of purpose that he could not explain. Once they were ready to move, Kaya gestured toward the path leading away from the canyon. "Follow me carefully," she instructed. "The road ahead is not easy. There are dangers in the hills, and the girls must learn to be aware but not afraid. Walk slowly and listen to the land. It speaks to those who pay attention." As they began their journey, he noticed the way the girls moved cautiously, glancing at every shadow and sound. He kept close, offering encouragement without rushing them, allowing them to regain some confidence in the open desert. With each step, he felt the fragile bond between them beginning to grow, though it was still tenuous and delicate. They walked for hours, the sun climbing higher, casting its warmth across the rocky landscape. Along the way, Kaya shared stories of her family, of their traditions, and of the lessons she hoped her daughters would carry with them. She spoke of respect for the land, for the creatures that lived within it, and for one another. He listened intently, absorbing every detail, understanding that this knowledge was vital for the girls' survival and for their identity. At one point, they stopped near a small stream that trickled through the rocks. The girls hesitated, unsure whether it was safe to drink, and he smiled gently, showing them how to cup their hands and sip carefully. The simple act became a small lesson in trust and guidance. As they drank, he noticed the tension in their bodies easing slightly. Yana even smiled faintly, and Nijoni's hand relaxed from clutching her grandmother's skirt. Kaya watched quietly, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and relief. "You are learning quickly," she said to the girls. "The world is harsh, but kindness and care can guide you through it. Remember that always." They continued their journey, encountering small challenges along the way. A narrow ledge that required careful balance, a steep incline that tested their stamina, and even a few startled animals that ran across their path. Each obstacle became an opportunity for teaching, and he realized that his role was evolving. He was no longer simply a protector. He was a teacher, a guide, and slowly, a source of trust and reassurance for the girls. As the day progressed, the girls began to speak more, their curiosity overcoming their initial fear. They asked questions about him, about his life, and about why he had chosen to help their grandmother. He answered honestly, careful not to frighten them, sharing stories of his own experiences in the world, of mistakes he had made, and of lessons he had learned. They listened intently, their eyes wide with fascination and a growing sense of connection. By late afternoon, the group reached a small grove of trees that offered shade and a place to rest. Kaya encouraged the girls to gather firewood while he helped set up a temporary resting area. As they worked, she spoke quietly to him again. "They will test you," she said. They may push boundaries, ask questions that seem impossible to answer, or act out in fear. Do not be frustrated. Patience is the key. Show them that you are consistent and they will learn that they can rely on you. He nodded, understanding the truth in her words. The girl's trust would not come easily, but it would come, slowly with time, and it was his responsibility to nurture it. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon once again, casting a golden glow over the desert, he felt a sense of calm despite the weight of the task before him. That evening, as the fire crackled and the girls sat close, he began to notice small signs of trust. Yana asked him to tell a story, her voice soft but eager, and he complied, weaving tales of courage, survival, and kindness. Nijoni, still shy, leaned slightly closer, listening intently, her eyes reflecting a quiet curiosity. Each small step, he realized, was a victory. Each moment of connection was a bridge being built between their hearts and his. Kaya watched with quiet approval, her presence both grounding and comforting. "Do not underestimate them," she said softly. "They have survived much already. They are stronger than you realize. But they will need guidance, and they will need your heart as much as your hands." He understood now that his journey with the girls would not be about simple protection. It would be about teaching, guiding, listening, and learning together. He would need to be patient, kind, and consistent, showing them through actions what words alone could never convey. And as he looked at their small faces, illuminated by the firelight, he felt a deep sense of purpose settle within him. That night, as the desert grew quiet and the stars shimmered overhead, he lay awake, thinking about the path ahead. There would be challenges, moments of fear, and times when he might feel unsure of his ability to protect them. But he also knew that the bond they were forming, the fragile trust, the beginnings of a family forged in unexpected circumstances, was worth every hardship. The night passed slowly, the air cool and still, and by morning the girls greeted him with faint smiles. It was a small victory but significant. Each day, he realized, would be another opportunity to build trust, to guide them, and to keep the promise made by their grandmother. As they prepared to continue their journey, he felt a quiet determination. He was no longer just a traveler passing through the desert. He was a protector, a guide, and a guardian for these two young girls. The responsibility weighed heavily, but it also filled him with a sense of purpose he had never known before. And so, with the sun rising behind them, casting its light across the rugged landscape, they set off once more, each step a testament to courage, trust, and the beginnings of a bond that would shape all their lives. The journey ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but for the first time, he felt that they could face it together, and that no matter what dangers awaited, they would find strength in one another. The journey through the desert and rocky hills had grown more challenging. The sun beat down relentlessly during the day, and the wind whispered across the barren land, carrying dust and sand in its wake. The girls, Ayana and Nijoni, walked close to him, their small hands brushing against his for reassurance from time to time. Their trust in him had grown slightly, but there were still moments when fear lingered in their eyes. He had learned a lot about them during the previous days. Ayana, the elder of the two, had a keen mind and an observant nature. She noticed everything, the slightest shift in the wind, the tiniest movement in the brush, or the faintest sound of an animal approaching. Nijoni, though younger and quieter, had a natural curiosity and a kind heart. She would sometimes reach out to touch a flower or watch a bird with wide-eyed wonder, showing him that even in danger, there was room for innocence. As they climbed a particularly steep ridge, the terrain became more treacherous. Loose rocks shifted underfoot, and one misstep could result in injury. He moved ahead carefully, showing the girls how to place their feet on stable ground, teaching them how to balance and trust the land beneath them. "Step here, not there," he said gently, guiding Ayana's foot. "The rock is loose. Feel for the solid ground before you put your weight down." Yana nodded, her eyes serious as she followed his instructions. "Like this?" she asked, placing her foot carefully. "Yes, exactly," he replied, smiling. "Good, you're learning quickly." Nijoni followed more slowly, her small hands clutching the sides of the rocks for support. He stayed close, ready to catch her if she slipped. "Take your time, little one," he encouraged. "There's no rush. The safest steps are the ones we think about." The girls began to trust him more with each careful movement, realizing that he wasn't just a guide but a protector. Even the smallest gestures, like adjusting their clothing to protect them from the sun, or helping them navigate tricky paths, showed them that he cared about their safety and comfort. As they reached the top of the ridge, the view stretched out before them, a vast expanse of desert and mountains, rugged and beautiful. The girls paused to catch their breath, their eyes wide as they took in the scene. He could see the awe in their expressions, and for a moment the fear that had been present in their hearts seemed to fade. "Isn't it beautiful?" he said softly, pointing to the horizon. Yana nodded. "It's huge. I've never seen anything like it." Nijoni whispered, "It feels endless." "Yes," he said, "and it can be dangerous too, but if we are careful it can also be amazing. We must respect it and it will guide us safely." The day continued and they descended into a narrow canyon. The air was cooler here, and the shadows provided relief from the harsh sun. But the canyon also brought new challenges. The walls were high and echoes bounced strangely, making it difficult to hear approaching sounds. Small animals scurried along the edges and birds swooped overhead, adding life to the otherwise silent passage. As they walked, he explained the importance of listening to the environment. "The desert speaks," he said. "It tells us when danger is near. Watch the ground, the sky, and even the plants. They all have messages. If we pay attention, we can stay safe." The girls listened intently, their curiosity now mingled with a sense of responsibility. They began to notice the subtle signs he pointed out: a bent branch signaling an animal's path, footprints in the dust, or the sudden rustle of a bush that suggested movement nearby. Slowly, they were learning to read the world around them, guided by his steady presence. Suddenly, a sharp noise shattered the calm. A rock slipped from the canyon wall above, tumbling toward them with alarming speed. He reacted instantly, pulling the girls to safety behind a larger boulder. His heart raced, but his training and instinct took over. The girls gasped, clinging to him, their eyes wide with fear. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Yana nodded quickly, though her hands trembled. "Yes, thank you." Nijoni, still clutching his arm, whispered, "I was scared." "I know," he said gently. "But you did exactly what I asked. You stayed close and you are safe. That's what matters." The incident became a small lesson in trust and preparedness. The girls realized that danger was real, but with careful attention and calm action, it could be managed. They began to see him not only as a protector, but as someone who could teach them to face fear without panic. As the day progressed, they reached a small oasis hidden between two rocky outcrops. There was a shallow pool of water, surrounded by a few palms and desert flowers. The girls ran to it, dipping their hands and splashing lightly, their laughter ringing through the canyon. It was a rare moment of joy, a brief escape from the tension of survival. He watched them, feeling a warmth in his chest. Moments like these reminded him why he had accepted the responsibility of their safety. It wasn't just about keeping them alive. It was about helping them experience life, even in its harshest forms. After they rested, he began teaching the girls basic survival skills. He showed them how to find edible plants, how to use stones to create a small signal fire, and how to move quietly through the terrain without attracting unnecessary attention. The lessons were slow and careful, but the girls were eager to learn. They asked questions constantly, their curiosity blossoming into practical knowledge. Yana was quick to understand patterns and strategies, often anticipating his instructions. Nijoni, though more hesitant, excelled at observing small details and remembering his guidance. By evening, they had both learned simple skills that could make a difference in a dangerous situation. He felt proud of them, but he also knew there was still much more to teach. As the sun began to set, they found a safe spot to camp for the night. He built a small fire, showing the girls how to tend it safely, while they gathered stones and sticks for protection. The stars began to appear overhead, and the desert night was quiet except for the gentle crackle of the fire. The girls sat close to him, and he noticed a change in their demeanor. They were more relaxed, their eyes less fearful, their movements less tense. The bond between them had strengthened through the day's trials, shared experiences, and moments of trust. Kaya, their grandmother, watched from a distance, her eyes filled with approval and hope. She had chosen wisely, he realized. These children were not only learning from him, but also teaching him patience, humility, and the quiet strength that comes from trust. That night he sat near the fire, reflecting on the journey so far. The weight of responsibility remained heavy, but it no longer felt overwhelming. The girls had shown resilience, curiosity, and courage, and he knew that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. He thought about the words Kaya had spoken when he first saved her. "My daughters are yours." At first, he had been unsure what it meant, but now he understood. It was not just a promise of responsibility. It was a trust that went beyond words, a bond formed by courage, kindness, and the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. The night passed quietly, and the first light of dawn brought with it a renewed sense of determination. They packed their belongings, extinguished the fire, and continued their journey. Each step was deliberate, each movement cautious but confident. The girls were learning to rely on him, and he, in turn, was learning to trust their instincts, their strengths, and their growing courage. By midday, they encountered a dry riverbed. The girls paused, unsure how to cross it safely. He showed them how to test the ground with a stick, teaching them to recognize unstable areas and to step carefully. Jana took the lead, testing each step before moving, while Najoni followed closely, her small hand brushing against his for reassurance. "Good job," he said, smiling. "See how careful planning keeps us safe. You are learning quickly." The girls beamed with pride. The small victories, the lessons learned through patience and care, were beginning to shape them into capable and confident young people. He could see their fear slowly giving way to trust, their uncertainty replaced by growing courage. By the time the sun began to set again, they found another sheltered spot to rest. The girls were tired but satisfied, their faces flushed from the day's exertion and excitement. He built a small fire and handed them water, watching them sip carefully. Their trust in him had grown, and he felt a deep sense of purpose. As the stars appeared overhead, he realized that this journey was no longer just about survival. It was about teaching, guiding, and forming bonds that would last a lifetime. Each day brought new challenges, but it also brought moments of joy, learning, and connection. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would be dangers, obstacles, and moments of doubt. But for the first time, he felt a quiet confidence. Together, they could face whatever lay ahead, and together they would grow stronger. And so, under the wide desert sky, their journey continued, each step a lesson, each challenge a test, and each moment a building block of trust, courage, and hope. The next morning, the desert air was cooler than usual, carrying a hint of moisture from a distant river. The group packed their small belongings, the girls moving with more confidence than before. Jana had taken the lead in organizing their limited supplies, while Najoni carefully followed, making sure nothing was left behind. He watched them, feeling a quiet sense of pride. They were learning quickly, but he also knew that the challenges ahead would test not only their skills but their courage. They set out toward a narrow canyon that would provide a safer passage through the mountains. The sun was high and the rocky terrain stretched before them, uneven and unpredictable. As they climbed a ridge, he noticed subtle signs that something was amiss. The wind had shifted, carrying the faint scent of smoke and dust. He signaled the girls to pause, lowering his voice. "Stay close," he whispered. "We might not be alone." Yana's sharp eyes scanned the area and she nodded, understanding his concern. Nijoni clung slightly closer, sensing the tension in the air. The desert, though beautiful, could be dangerous, and he knew that their journey was about to test them in ways they had not yet experienced. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the canyon. Rocks tumbled from the ridge above, and a group of wild animals, coyotes, emerged from a nearby ravine, their eyes fixed on the group. The girls froze, fear gripping them. He acted quickly, placing himself between the animals and the girls. His voice was firm and steady. "Back slowly, but don't run," he instructed. "Move together, stay calm, and do exactly what I say." He grabbed a long stick from the ground and waved it carefully, making himself appear larger. The coyotes circled, growling, their movements deliberate. He could see the girls' hands shaking, their breaths quick, but he knew panic could make the situation worse. "Step behind me," he whispered. "Keep your heads low and your movements slow. Trust me." Gianna and Nijoni obeyed, moving carefully as he guided them backward, inch by inch. He maintained eye contact with the animals, using calm, deliberate movements to show dominance without provoking aggression. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the coyotes slowly retreated, realizing the humans were not easy prey. The girls exhaled in relief, their bodies trembling with adrenaline. Gianna looked at him with wide eyes. That was close," she whispered. "Yes," he said gently, "but you did well. You stayed calm and followed my instructions. That's what kept us safe." Nijoni, still clutching his sleeve, nodded quietly. "I was scared," she admitted. "I know," he replied. "It's okay to be scared. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about facing fear and doing the right thing despite it." The incident, though frightening, became a turning point. The girls realized that danger was real, but with guidance, preparation, and trust, it could be managed. They began to understand that he was not just a protector, but someone who could teach them to navigate the world safely. As they continued their journey, the terrain grew steeper. The canyon walls rose high on either side, and the path became narrow, requiring careful steps. They encountered a dry riverbed with loose stones, which made footing tricky. He showed the girls how to test the ground before stepping and how to maintain balance while crossing difficult areas. "You see," he explained, "the world has challenges, but if we pay attention, we can handle them. Every step matters. Every decision counts." Yana nodded, her face determined. "I understand. I want to learn everything so we can be safe." Nijoni looked at him shyly but followed closely, her confidence growing with each careful step. He could see that the girls were beginning to internalize his lessons, understanding not just how to survive, but how to move with awareness, patience, and care. By late afternoon, they reached a small plateau that overlooked a valley below. The view was breathtaking, an endless stretch of desert and mountains, with a river glinting like silver in the distance. The girls gasped, momentarily forgetting their fears in awe of the landscape. He smiled. "It's beautiful, isn't it? But remember, beauty can sometimes hide danger. Stay alert always." The girls nodded, but he could see a spark of excitement in their eyes. They were beginning to find joy in the journey, despite the challenges. As they prepared to descend into the valley, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. He knew they had to find shelter quickly. The valley was open, with little cover, and the approaching storm could turn the dry riverbeds into dangerous torrents. He guided the girls toward a rocky overhang that would provide temporary protection. "We need to move fast but carefully," he instructed. "Stay close and don't panic." They hurried, stepping over loose rocks and navigating uneven terrain. The first drops of rain began to fall, and the girls clung to him, both for physical support and reassurance. The storm grew stronger, rain hammering down and wind gusting through the valley. Thunder rolled across the hills and lightning flashed, illuminating the rocky landscape. The girls shivered, cold and frightened. "I don't like this," Nijoni said, her voice small. "I know," he replied softly, "but we're together and we'll be safe. Just follow me and stay close. We'll get through this." They reached the overhang just as the storm intensified. The rocky shelter provided some protection, but the rain poured down around them and the wind howled through the canyon. He made a small fire, shielding it as best as he could, and huddled close to the girls to keep them warm. "This is what the world can be like," he said gently. "Sometimes it's frightening and we feel small, but if we stick together we can face anything." The girls nodded, their faces still pale from fear but filled with trust. They had seen his calmness and courage in action, and it had shown them that fear could be managed. They began to understand that survival was not just about strength, but about patience, knowledge, and reliance on one another. The storm lasted for hours, and during that time he told the girls stories, not just of survival but of hope, courage, and the importance of kindness. He spoke of people who had helped him in his life, of lessons learned from mistakes, and of the importance of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The girls listened closely, their fear gradually giving way to fascination and trust. By nightfall, the storm had passed. The air was cool and fresh, and the desert sparkled under the light of the moon. The girls looked at him with a new respect, seeing him not just as a protector, but as a guide, a teacher, and a steady presence in a world that often seemed unpredictable and frightening. He looked at them and smiled softly. "You've been very brave today. You listened, followed instructions, and stayed calm. That's courage." Iana and Nijoni exchanged a glance, and he could see pride in their expressions. They had faced fear, survived danger, and learned valuable lessons. They were beginning to understand the true meaning of trust, courage, and teamwork. That night, as they settled under the rocky overhang, he reflected on the day. The storm had tested them, but it had also strengthened the bond between them. He realized that the greatest dangers were not just the wild animals or the harsh terrain, but the challenges that tested their trust, patience, and courage. And they had passed those tests together. He knew that the journey ahead would bring even greater challenges, but he also knew that the girls were growing stronger with each experience. They were learning to face fear, to trust, and to rely on one another. And he too was learning patience, resilience, and the quiet strength that comes from caring for others. As the desert night stretched on, the stars twinkling above, he felt a sense of calm. They had survived the storm and their bond had deepened. The promise made by their grandmother, "My daughters are yours," was no longer just words. It was becoming a living reality, a responsibility he embraced fully, and a trust he would honor no matter what lay ahead. The journey was far from over, but that night, under the vast desert sky, he felt a quiet certainty. Together, they could face anything. They were no longer just a protector and two frightened girls. They were a team, a family forged in the trials of the desert, united by trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond of shared experience. The sun rose gently over the desert horizon, painting the rocky landscape with warm shades of gold and pink. The group was ready to continue their journey. After the storm and the challenges they had faced, the girls, Iana and Nijoni, were stronger, more confident, and more trusting than ever before. Even Kaya, their grandmother, had smiled with quiet approval, sensing that the bond forming between them and their protector was becoming unbreakable. They walked carefully along the canyon floor, the path winding between tall rocks and small desert shrubs. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of earth and distant flowers. As they moved, he noticed the way the girls now scanned their surroundings, not with fear but with awareness. Yana had even started pointing out paths that looked safer, and Nijoni spotted small details like animal tracks and water sources that could help them navigate more efficiently. "You've learned well," he said softly, smiling at them. "I am proud of both of you. You're becoming stronger every day." Yana's eyes shone with determination. "I want to help to make sure we are safe," she said. Nijoni nodded in agreement, her small hand brushing against his as if to show she understood. Their journey that day was long and difficult. The desert heat intensified as the sun climbed higher, and the terrain became more uneven, with sharp rocks and loose gravel making every step a challenge. But they moved together, each step a testament to the lessons learned over the past days: trust, patience, observation, and courage. By midday, they reached the edge of a vast plain. In the distance, he could see a small settlement where they could rest safely. The girls' eyes widened at the sight of it, hope shining through the fatigue and dust on their faces. For the first time, they saw a possibility of comfort, food, and safety waiting for them ahead. "Do you see that?" he asked. "That's where we can rest and regroup. But we must still be careful. The path there may have surprises." Yana and Nijoni nodded, but their steps were lighter, their spirits lifted by the sight of their destination. As they crossed the plain, a sudden movement in the distance caught his attention. A group of strangers appeared on the horizon, moving toward them. He quickly signaled the girls to stop and crouch behind a small ridge for cover. He observed carefully, trying to gauge whether these strangers posed any threat. "They don't look dangerous," he whispered after a moment. "They might just be travelers like us, but stay close to me just in case." The strangers approached, and as they came closer, it became clear that they were friendly, a family with a small caravan, moving through the desert to reach the settlement. The girls relaxed slightly, watching the newcomers with curiosity. One of the travelers called out a greeting, and he responded politely, introducing himself and the girls. The strangers smiled warmly, offering water and food. He allowed the girls to take small sips, encouraging them to regain strength and nourishment. The simple act of kindness further reinforced the lessons he had been teaching them. That trust could be extended carefully, and that help could come from unexpected places. After a short rest, they continued their journey, now with renewed energy. The settlement drew closer, and the girls began to show excitement. Their steps became quicker, their laughter returning in small bursts as they imagined reaching safety and comfort. For the first time in many days, the fear that had been their constant companion was replaced by anticipation and hope. As they entered the outskirts of the settlement, he took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. The girls had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, yet they had grown stronger, braver, and more capable with each challenge. He had witnessed their resilience, their courage, and their ability to trust. And he had also discovered a strength within himself, a patience, a dedication, and a love for these two young lives that had become as important to him as his own. They found shelter at a small inn run by a kind woman who welcomed them warmly. She provided food, water, and a safe place to rest. The girls eagerly ate and drank, their energy returning while he quietly observed, relieved to see them safe and cared for. That evening, after the girls had settled and Kaya had prepared a small meal, he spoke to them about what lay ahead. "We've faced many challenges, but the journey isn't over. You will continue to grow, to learn, and to explore the world safely. And I will be here to guide and protect you as long as you need me." Yana smiled, a mixture of gratitude and determination in her expression. "We will remember everything you've taught us," she said. "We will be careful and we will be strong." Nijoni nodded quietly, her small hand resting on his arm. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with sincerity and trust. Kaya, their grandmother, looked at him with deep appreciation. "You have honored my trust," she said softly. "My daughters are safe and they have learned from you. I cannot thank you enough." He shook his head gently. "The credit is yours, Kaya. You raised strong, wise, and courageous girls. I only helped guide them for a while. They had the strength all along." The following days in the settlement were peaceful. The girls explored safely, learning from the people around them and practicing the skills he had taught them. They carried water, helped in small chores, and observed the rhythms of daily life. He continued to guide them, offering lessons in both survival and kindness, teaching them to remain alert while also enjoying moments of joy and laughter. As the girls grew more confident, he reflected on the promise made by Kaya, "My daughters are yours." At first, he had felt the weight of responsibility heavily, unsure if he could live up to it. But now, seeing their growth, courage, and trust, he understood the full meaning. It was not merely about protection. It was about guiding, teaching, and nurturing. It was about love and trust in the purest form. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the settlement, he sat with the girls under a large tree. They talked quietly, sharing stories of their experiences, their fears, and their hopes. Iana looked at him with a serious expression. "We are strong because of you," she said. "You taught us not to be afraid, to trust ourselves, and to believe we can face challenges." "We will never forget that," Nijoni added softly. "You are part of our family now. We trust you completely." His heart swelled with emotion. He realized that the journey had not only changed their lives but his own. The bond between them was now unbreakable, built on trust, courage, and shared experiences. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had honored Kaya's trust and helped these young lives grow stronger in a world that could be both beautiful and harsh. As the days turned into weeks, he continued to guide the girls, but now with a different perspective. They were no longer entirely dependent on him. They had learned resilience, awareness, and courage. He encouraged them to explore, to ask questions, and to make decisions for themselves, knowing that they were now capable of thinking critically and acting wisely. One evening, Kaya gathered the family together under the stars. She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and pride. "You have done more than I could have hoped for," she said. "My daughters are safe, strong, and wise. They will grow into remarkable young women, and it is because of your guidance. You honored the promise and you have become part of our family." He smiled humbly. "It was an honor," he replied. "They taught me as much as I taught them. Courage, trust, and love can grow in unexpected ways." The girls hugged him tightly, their small arms wrapping around his waist. Iana whispered, "Thank you for everything. We will never forget you." Nijoni added softly, "We will always trust you, always." In that quiet moment under the vast desert sky, he felt the weight of responsibility lift. The promise made by Kaya had been fulfilled. The girls were safe, strong, and ready to face the world, and he had been part of their journey, not just as a protector, but as a guide, teacher, and guardian. The desert around them was silent, the stars sparkling like tiny lanterns in the night sky. It was a reminder that life was vast and unpredictable, but trust, courage, and love could create a bond strong enough to face any challenge. The journey had begun with a single act of bravery, saving an elderly woman, and had grown into something far greater, shaping lives and hearts in ways that would last a lifetime. As they all sat together, the fire crackling softly beside them, he realized that the true meaning of Kaya's words, "My daughters are yours," was now fully clear. It was not just about protection or duty. It was about love, guidance, and the unbreakable bond between people who trust and care for one another. And in that moment, under the endless desert sky, surrounded by the girls and their grandmother, he felt a profound sense of peace. The journey was complete, yet the bond they shared would continue forever, a living testament to courage, trust, and the extraordinary power of kindness in a world that could be both harsh and beautiful.